Hello and welcome to Movie Vault 666. My name's Chris, and recently I reviewed a film called A Time to Die. A poorly paced action movie bought from a bargain bin. And even though that film sucked, it didn't really teach me anything, because apparently I went out and bought another poorly paced action movie called City of Fear. It's about a reporter as well, and it's poorly paced. Though it's got a slightly better pace than A Time to Die, I'll give it that. It's got a martial artist in it, in the form of Gary Daniels, who apparently plays a half-wit reporter according to the back of the box. Not the back of the box is necessarily all that reliable, because it says, Dr. Venko had supposedly died in a boating accident? Blurb aside, the film begins with our hero, Steve Roberts, walking to his car before a mysterious assailant attacks. Steve fights back as the credits roll, but is defeated. However, it turns out the attacker is his martial arts trainer, who apparently holds his lessons in an abandoned warehouse filled with cars that could be easily damaged, which raises a lot of questions. Although not as many as the sensei's accent, which is so thick that it actually makes most of his lines of dialogue incomprehensible. Something you have to get used to when we meet other characters in the film.
Until you realize that the universe is not determined by the physical, but how it works in the harmony with your mind and spirits, you will never reach your kanketsu completion.
Speaking of which, in the next scene, several Bulgarians arrive at Steve's door to talk to him about an old friend called Charlie Venko.
Bulgaria.
He's doing genetic research in the city of Sofia.
Well, that sounds like Charlie.
He does like living on the edge.
Charlie wants Steve to cover a piece of research he's been doing in an article. However, Steve is a bit reluctant as he doesn't normally cover science pieces. Charlie, however, is offering $5,000 and free flight if he accepts, which leads to Steve accepting, funnily enough. So Steve flies out to Bulgaria where a taxi driver called Basil takes him to Charlie's house. When Steve arrives, he finds a funeral procession leaving the house. According to Basil, it's for Charlie. This is followed up by a funeral scene attended by all sorts, shifty-looking men in suits, government and military officials, and several women in black dresses. However, as soon as Steve room clearer Roberts makes the scene, they pretty much immediately all leave. Well, all except
Bill Phillips,
who introduces himself.
of Charlie's friend. Need a ride?
Yeah, I do.
Good luck with that then. They then proceed to talk for a bit until...
You're welcome to stay at my place tonight if you want.
Thanks, that's kind of you. But I think I'll be better off in a hotel. Can you recommend one?
Yeah.
At which point things seem a little awkward. The sexual tension is just kind of hanging there, isn't it?
All set, they'll take care of you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Thanks for everything.
Okay, have a good flight back.
Thanks.
See you.
Bill.
Yeah.
They're not gonna do it, are they?
One second.
Yeah.
That girl at the cemetery, the one the cops kept me from, who was she?
Okay, phew. So with neither Steve nor Bill brave enough to admit their true feelings for each other, Steve goes back to his room and tries to phone home.
Hello,
Operator.
can I help you?
Yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with the States for hours now. What's the hell's going on?
The satellite is down. But you can call the UK if you wish.
Oh sure, that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? Anyway, a leaflet gets pushed underneath Steve's door. He opens it just in time to see a man running away. Although, I hope he's supposed to be part of the film and he's not just a stagehand who was too slow to get out of shot in time. It would make sense given that Steve doesn't seem at all surprised by him. The leaflet turns out to be for a strip club where the lady from earlier apparently works, and also a strip club that delivers leaflets door to door. At any rate, Steve orders a taxi to try and drive down there later, when suddenly...
Yeah, I'll be right there.
Can you give me a taxi for this evening? For 6:30?
I'll be right there!
Apparently he really meant right over there because he didn't even move, he just sort of edited his way over there. At any rate, opening the door reveals...
Colonel Kuzlovska, Bulgaria Security Division. May we speak?
Yeah, her and her two goons who apparently just invite themselves in whilst,
What can I do for you, Colonel Kozlovsky?
Kozlovska. In Bulgarian, it's Kozlovska.
Yeah, well, anyway, she questions Steve in a coherent, logical, and okay, she asks him this.
Is this normally your bowl of soup?
I got nothing.
Not really.
And so the soup is lost forever, and oh, okay, I'm kidding. Instead, the film finally gets to the point of this scene.
You should stick to stories you can handle. Да?
Now just wait a minute. You come in here insinuating that a friend of mine is doing something illegal, and then you tell me to butt out? That it's not my bowl of soup?
Well, I'm so going to quote that out of context. At any rate, Steve walks down to his taxi, a scene so dramatic that it prompts this music. Well, after that, I really feel like I need a drink. Okay, in fairness to the movie, it does actually turn out that two men are following him, but it still seems like it could have been better shot so that the music seemed less retarded. Steve drives up to nightclub, according to the door at any rate, and then pole dancing occurs until Steve decides to head out the back to find the woman from the funeral who, as it turns out, was called Alexa. First, Steve has to get past a difficult bouncer. Alright, some action! And it's over.
I guess Americans.
Steve enters Alexa's dressing room and talks to Alexa, who reveals she already knows his full name.
I'm sorry.
Steve tells her that he's suspicious about the details of Charlie's death, and the two agree to meet the next day for breakfast. Afterwards, we see Steve back at his hotel. One of the staff at the hotel says something, and then calls some men in a car waiting outside. Steve spots their lame attempts to hide from him, and then this happens. Okay, let's do that again, but this time with the scoring they should have used. Anyway, with the thugs out of action, Steve goes to talk to Captain Serge, who rented Charlie his boat. Apparently works in a warehouse that stores water bottles. However, like most people so far, he's not pleased to see Steve. Steve disarms him and fights off a man with a bat, at which point the captain starts to stumble through his lines.
His assistant boy.
Which Steve deciphers to mean that Charlie's assistant, Dr. Emil Boeth, was also aboard the boat, but the captain refuses to give him any more information.
This is Sofia.
Is murder any different here?
Actually, in Sofia, it just makes people spit red drinks out of their mouths. See? So yes, the captain conveniently only gives enough exposition to carry the plot without ending it here. And then this happens. I don't think I even have to say anything about that, that's funny on its own. So anyway, that scene just sort of peters out after that. We never really see Steve escape or anything, he just kind of shows up at a restaurant meeting Alexa and wow, look at that blank, expressionless face. This is the first extended scene from this actress where she should at least be vaguely interested, but instead we just get total surprise! So Steve gets suspicious that Alexa isn't more upset, which means that the actress simply confused evasive and bored.
What is it?
I'm just trying to figure out why this isn't more upsetting for you.
In response to this, Alexa erupts into fury.
Tell me how I should feel about Charlie's death.
Listen, lady, you better start showing more emotion, or else I'm getting my machete.
That's horrible.
Ah! Okay. I'm calm. I'm calm.
Wow, City of Fear, my favorite movie.
Right, back to the film anyway.
This investigating is dangerous. In Bulgaria, the walls have ears.
That still doesn't explain why the government is so interested in Charlie's research.
Well, of course it does. He was working on ear medicine for wolves. Cut to our intrepid duo arriving at Charlie's place, only to find it trashed.
Animals.
You still think it was an accident?
Didn't you hear her? She thinks it was animals.
Charlie always wanted the best.
Yeah, even as a kid he said he'd die rich. It was in junior high. I remember we were taking a math test. Charlie was cheating from the kid in front of me.
Wow, that's really interesting. Oh, a
Staring
coat.
at him, I couldn't believe it.
And with that thrilling piece of character development concluded, the two head out again.
We met at the club.
We then get Alexa's backstory with Charlie and...
so soon.
Is she actually falling asleep in her own story? That's pretty impressive.
Love is what you make of it.
Now that sounds like Charlie.
Well, he must have a really feminine voice then. I can't wait to not hear it, because he's definitely dead and not really obviously alive or anything. God. The two drive out, presumably so Alexa can go to her apartment, but Steve makes an important discovery and asks Alexa for help.
I need your help. Some clean money, information, some inquiries, a copy of the autopsy report. I need to find that guy Emil Boeth.
Wow, you don't ask for a lot, do you, Steve? At any rate, Alexa agrees to help.
Look, I'll call you later, okay?
Good luck.
And with that emotional goodbye, the two separate temporarily. We cut to our next scene, and despite having asked for Alexa's help finding Emil Boeth, Steve immediately shows up at the place he works at without any help whatsoever from Alexa. When Steve asks the nurse about Dr. Boeth, she tells him he hasn't seen him in days. But when he asks about seeing Charlie's office, a clearly evil doctor appears. Anyway, Dr. Evilstein tells Steve to leave, but Steve pretends that he knows more than he does about the project. So Dr. Evilstein throws his arse out and calls some goons to kill him, giving us another excellent use of the dramatic taxi music from earlier. Oh, wow. That's fantastic. He even has to hold the camera himself. The bad guys catch him and we get some shots that are supposed to be throwing him into walls, presumably some kind of super strength. He has to run away when thugs with guns show up, magically teleporting him to a marketplace. He probably could slip away at this point, but if he did that, we wouldn't get shots like this. We also wouldn't get to see a thoroughly unimpressed looking audience standing around either. Once again, the guys with guns show up, shots are fired, and people spit Fanta fruit twist out of their mouths. Then they all fight using pipes off what I guess must be some kind of lead pipe stall. We cut away, which leads me to believe the guys with guns just randomly decided to join in the melee combat. Steve heads back to his room and that happens. Not the most polite way of kidnapping someone ever. Steve awakes in the room with the colonel from before, with some goons. Plus he has some things in his hands that I can't quite make out. The colonel tells him that Charlie might have been involved with the Russian mafia, and to leave the case alone before leaving him in his room under guard. But get this. A guy brings him some food, and Steve knocks him out and leaves in his uniform. I know they're flirting with that woman, but they don't even glance at Steve. So having made the escape, he heads to Alexa's place to ask her for more information. However, Alexa doesn't give Steve much information, so he gets angry at her, causing a heated discussion. Well, with Alexa involved, not really heated, more half-baked. I mean, Alexa pulls out all the stops there, nearly approaching an emotion.
Get out!
At any rate, during the fight, it turns out that Charlie used to hit Alexa, which causes Steve to show concern for her. Seeing this, Alexa finally lets on what she knows. The next morning, Alexa tells Steve she intends to go with him, despite Steve's fears for her. With the two back together, they decide to see Steve's BFF from earlier, Bill.
Don't look at her.
It looks like he's about to tell them what he knows, but a car speeds around the corner and begins firing at them. Steve and Alexa hit the deck immediately, but Bill goes into poor writing and simply seems to sit there while being shot in the head, apparently from a completely different direction than where the car was. several more men pursue Steve, who seems to be sticking to the speed limit. They also find a shotgun in the back of the car. Alexa fires off a shot and then this happens. I can't even begin to describe what had just happened there. She hits a car, which causes it to skid, which forces a truck to slide out of control as well. So one of the other cars does the same thing from a time to die. The whole thing being made more confusing by the changing positions of the vehicles and the fact the motorbike disappeared from one of the shots as well. I have no idea how to even put this into words.
Good shooting, Chris.
Good shooting? Fuck you! The whole thing's made even stupider with the bikers just driving away. Not even stopping to check if the car they were chasing got away. I don't know. I mean, were either of those cars driven by innocents? I guess I just feel sorry for the guy who magically appeared in the jumping car before it blew up. So with that insanity out of the way, Steve and Alexa break into Charlie's office to hunt for clues. But they can't figure out Charlie's password until Steve remembers that Citizen Kane was his favourite film, and it turns out to be his password. Steve blunders through Charlie's computer, somehow deleting a folder called Formulas rather than opening it. But Dr. Evilstein is alerted to their presence because he looks into a Palantir, or he just generally finds Charlie's door suspicious. I mean, they were really talking loudly, but he looked suspicious long before that. Anyway, Steve finds some products with progress meters showing how far they are from completion. One is completed and Steve checks it out, finding it to be a product called Blue Mist. Well, he doesn't find out immediately. Despite the display clearly saying Blue Mist 100%, Steve has to type some buttons before he can find out which product is at 100%. Alexa then exposits the following.
It's true. Blue Mist. It's a new drug in Bulgaria. They say 100% addictive.
I'm sorry, but 100% addictive? What does that even mean? Does that mean 100% of people are addicted to it? Or does it mean 100% of the ingredients are addictive? Of course we never find out. Instead we get a pattern of Blue Mist DNA structure implying it's alive. Also apparently a cell looks like a mosaic made of jelly. But Steve deciphers this child's drawing to mean it attaches itself to human DNA! And then does what?
Charlie's master.
Not gonna explain, huh?
I don't understand that.
Well, anyway, this science mumbo-jumbo is too important to be shared with the world, so Dr. Evilstein starts shooting at them. They're subdued by Alexa, and for all I know, he burns in the lab because we never see him again. So the two run outside, only to be confronted by martial artist security guards. Apparently hospital security is a really big deal in Bulgaria. Steve defeats them quickly, and the two head off with Alexa showing him several Blue Mist addicts. Oh, the horror of this fictional drug! Damn you, science! You blow it up! Anyway, one of the addicts stabs Alexa, and nothing comes of this scene. Well, except another scene where Steve has to take care of her, in which she actually passes out at one point.
How long have I been?
2 days.
Seriously? I don't think it was even bleeding by the time they got back, and it's not like it really adds anything to the film. Anyway, the two argue about Charlie and whether he was a nice guy or not, with Alexa defending him.
He's using you, like he uses all women.
Sofia is a cruel city. A city of fear. That's horrible.
Also, I'm not really sure whether he uses all women line comes from. I mean, Steve never said about another incident with Charlie, and if he knew about one, you'd have thought he'd have had a different attitude towards Charlie throughout this film. Oh yeah, we also now get a forced-in romance subplot that goes nowhere. Well, the romance may not be going anywhere, but Alexa is, she's dragged off by villains, somehow without Steve noticing, despite being sleeping right next to her. Also, she's putting up one hell of a fight there, isn't she? You seem to be kidnapping me. Please stop that. Mind you, I suppose that she probably hasn't eaten or drank anything for 3 days because they were too busy shagging to get her supplies. So she might be better off with the kidnappers. In response, Steve doesn't seem to even be miffed about the situation and heads somewhere where apparently she's being held. It turns out that the Colonel had Alexa kidnapped and Steve tells her to dig up Charlie's grave, which apparently they just do without him saying anything else. But the man in the grave turns out to be Dr. Boa. Steve then asks who the third witness who testified Charlie died on the boat was, but they refuse to say.
That's not important.
More like, we just don't want to give away the twist at the end of the movie, because clearly that is important. So Steve walks away and, get this, he somehow finds Vasil again, who takes him to an otherwise random location where we find out that Charlie is alive! Oh, what a shocking twist that no one would have guessed. Oh, am I kidding? It was obvious from about 30 seconds after his death. I also love how Steve can't see him till the camera does, even though logically he would have been stood right in front of the fucking taxi. Oh look, it's Skulk and Bull as well.
Since I got here, there's been military, cops, thugs shooting at me. Alexa, she's... Whoa, relax.
Whoa, yeah, calm down. You're almost making it sound like something interesting has happened in this film so far. Anyway, Charlie explains that he faked his own death to avoid people trying to get the formula for blue mist from him. He also claims that it's America that's the real killer, because he says it's their fault that people in Bulgaria are starving to death. He also tells Steve if he doesn't go to the cops, he can get them out of the country. But if he does, he'll do everything to get to him through Alexa. So Steve attempts to leave, but Bull smacks him over the head with his gun, and Steve awakes in a car going through a car wash. There's also another man in the car, which Steve recognises as Yarrow, the head of the Russian mafia. Yarrow tells Steve to leave the country, and then he disappears from the film as mysteriously as he came. Now, some might say that introducing a Russian mafia boss about 15 minutes before the end of the film was a little pointless. And they'd be pretty much right. After that scene, Steve and Alexa argue, and the Colonel does this. Fantastic. That scene added a lot. A woman walking. So Steve arranges for himself and Alexa to leave with Charlie, but the police arrange with him to arrive and bust Charlie. On the way, Alexa reveals that she used to be with Yarrow before Charlie, which means nothing. Whoopee. The two arrive at Charlie's meeting point and head through an underground passage, and even though he leaves two men behind on the surface, the police evidently track nobody. Steve, Charlie and Alexa eventually arrive at an abandoned building where Charlie reveals the plan to fly in a helicopter to Turkey, double-crossing the Russian mob, at which point Charlie and Steve engage in some witty banter.
Cartel? You double-crossed the Russian mob? Are you fucking insane?
No, just richer.
It's Interpol.
Steve reveals that he went to the cops, and Charlie pulls a gun on him, whilst Alexa looks blank, expressionless, formless. Take your pick.
Come on, Steve.
It's also around about this point that Charlie starts chewing the scenery, almost doing enough acting to cancel out Alexa's lack of saying. So some men show up, some from Interpol, and some who I guess work for Charlie start battling it out, whilst Charlie's jaw seems to stop working. In desperation, Charlie kidnaps Alexa, but seems to give up after a few yards while his goons beat Steve up. Bullets begin to fly in the compound whilst Charlie runs from Steve. Given the setup, I wouldn't be surprised if Scooby and the gang started chasing him as well. Down in the firefight, we also get to see more awesome action like this, until we cut back to Charlie threatening to shoot Steve again. Even Steve seems a bit tired of it at this point. Charlie gets shot in the leg and Steve moves over to help save him from splattering all over the compound, especially as I don't think there's enough in the red drink budget for that much blood. Steve keeps hold of Charlie until the gunman who shot him before remembers he's still in the film and could just do it again, and so from another dimension, and without even aiming up like last time, somebody possibly completely different kills him. Wow. Biggest anticlimax ever. The battle then conveniently draws to a close with Charlie's men captured, as Steve sits alone, clearly upset by the death of his friend. He also sees two of the people who convinced him to go to Bulgaria in the first place.
Funny what life kicks up, no?
Don't make fun of his accent. Anyway, afterwards, the Colonel, whose acting started off slightly hammy and has been getting progressively worse, shows up for this scene.
My father always said the hard choices were the right choices.
Wow, that was even dubbed and it still sounded appalling. How bad must the original have been to choose that version?
You still want to catch that plane?
Ouch. 50 takes and that was the best one, huh?
I'll wait, over there.
Fine, just someone stop her acting, for God's sake! Okay, let's wrap this up before I kill myself. It turns out Alexa got someone to leave the flyer under Steve's door, which doesn't seem to make any sense. Steve basically tells her to take a hike, and Alexa falls asleep inside her head again. Steve walks away with jam on his face. Then the Colonel delivers this line.
I imagine you will get some notoriety. Make big news back home.
Causing more rage to boil up inside of me before we get the last line of the film delivered through a plume of smoke, which apparently is fine with no need for a reshoot. Steve then gets in the car and then the film just dies with no segue into an ending. The end. City of Fear. It's kind of lame. The acting is so bad that it actually kind of becomes good again. The action is completely non-existent and the plot feels tacked on. So, and even the editing is so bad at times, you'll just be left gazing in awe at the screen, trying to work out what the fuck just happened in a scene. The female lead is one of the worst actresses it's ever been my entirely dubious honour to witness. And Gary Daniels is so bland, it's really hard to even care about him. And I love how we never even found out what Blue Mist was, despite it having been a major plot point. So in summary, if you're a fan of bad acting, I would definitely recommend City of Fear. If you want coherent plot and blood-pumping action, suggest you go elsewhere. Well, that may have been terrible, but there's one thing that can always cheer me up. A nice tin of soup. I knock at the door? I better answer it right away.
I am Colonel Kozlovska.
Really?
For the purposes of this review, yes. Is that normally your bowl of soup?
Cheese sandwich, run, get help! Traitor! You come in here asking if this is usually my bowl of soup?
That's enough. I am confiscating your soup, and you are banned from reviewing Bulgarian action movies for the rest of eternity.
That's terrible. Thought there'd be more blood.